Real Talk with Grace Redman features conversations with fierce and fabulous people from Grace's community and circle who inspire others with their stories of overcoming challenges to create amazing. Grace is an entrepreneur and success coach who works with individuals to diminish their negative mental chatter, boost their confidence, achieve their goals, and increase their prosperity mindset. Get ready for a series of anything goes conversations with remarkable men and women that will get you jazzed for life's unlimited possibilities of success, freedom, and fun. Welcome to Real Talk with Grace Redman.
Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Real Talk, where I get to have real life, raw conversations with incredible people from my circles and communities who have overcome challenges and created amazing. Today, I have a very special guest with us, Gabby Villafan. Gabby is of Bolivian and Salvadorian descent and was born and raised in San Mateo, California. Her family moved to Bolivia during her junior year of high school, and she graduated from a bilingual school. When she returned to the States, she relocated to Northern Virginia and attended community college. After 2 years, she transferred to the University of Virginia, where she graduated with a bachelor's in foreign affairs and minor in history. Following graduation, she worked in Washington, D.C. as a litigation paralegal for 4 years. She is now a first-year law student at Drexel University at the Thomas R. Klein School of Law. Gabby!
Yes, hello.
I'm so excited to have you with us today.
I'm so excited. I'm so honored. And yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you. I'm the one that's honored to have you here. And like we just talked about, it's like it's come full circle, and how amazing life is that I get to have this conversation with you today, sweetheart.
Yeah, no, it definitely is.
So we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot. It's been, what an adventure that you've been on.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
So I want to kind of tell me a little bit about, in your junior year, you and your family moved to Bolivia, and tell me a little bit about how that went. Again, being in your junior year, kind of you have your friends, and here you go on this new and exciting adventure. Tell me a little bit how you navigated that.
Yeah, well, first, I think I'm glad I can look back and say that was exciting, because at the time, 16-year-old me did not think it was an exciting move at all. I had, like you mentioned, I grew up in San Mateo, California, went to school in Burlingame. And so really just, that was my whole life up until I was 16. That's all sort of like I knew. I'd been to El Salvador and Bolivia a couple of times growing up, but really just, that was only for a couple of weeks, sometimes a month. But so it was this, I think, spring of my sophomore year when my parents started, sort of toying with the idea of telling me, oh, we're going to move. And I didn't really pay attention to it until I think the summertime, when it was like, yeah, we're moving August 10th. And it was just like, yeah. What, why can't I stay? I think one of my friends, their families offered to let me stay with them. It was very sudden. But I think looking back, I knew my parents had always wanted to get out of the Bay Area. And I'm really glad that they did. Bolivia ended up being probably single-handed, one of the best experiences of my life. Made some lifelong friends there. Got to spend a lot of time with, family members that I had never really met before. And I think the most important thing, though, was that it really taught me or how to appreciate my culture and how to, really just love being Latina.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I love that story. And one thing for me is I have never been able to go back and visit the homeland of my parents, which is Palestine. And then when growing up, even with your mom, because I went to high school with her, when, she would talk about home, it's I always I wonder what that would feel like. So the fact that you had the opportunity to go back to your roots and have that experience, and also see a completely different culture than what we have here in the Bay Area. There's so many rich experiences and lessons I feel that come through that. And like you said, back then it's you as a 16-year-old girl, you're like, okay, what are you doing? But how amazing that it helped enrich your life so much. And the most important piece was, it sounds like spending time with family. connecting with family?
Yeah, I think it was, I mean, I think anyone that's like lived outside the US can sort of agree to this, that you sort of enjoy your life a little bit more when you're not here, in the sense that I think our society, there's a lot of just like constantly going, and always like you're always busy and you're always having to do, it's like what's next. And over there, it's like you really do enjoy your time with your family. Like lunchtime is like this entire city's shut down. Like you go home and you have like, a 3-course like lunch meal with your family. Then you take a little nap, like,
Mhm.
and then it was
You
always
live
like,
life.
yeah. And like in the afternoons, it was always like tea time, like it was like my mom and like 2 of my aunts, like they would always, because we all lived so close together, like we would all just get together, like all the kids would, playing soccer outside. Yeah. And
That
so,
sounds amazing. It's
yeah.
funny, although I've never been, back to Ramallah, they say the same thing. They're like,
Right.
yes, you guys are in the United States and you have your freedom. However, you guys are not living. You're always running and going. And we have the opportunity. We sit, we have lunch together, we visit together. So you're right. I think here, it's, well, being in the Bay Area, I'm going to relate it to this. We're always going so fast that we don't make the effort to stop and connect. And I really feel that's the most important thing in our life, is to connect with ourselves and with each other. So
Absolutely.
what an amazing contrast to have. And with that being said, now that you're in, law school and you have such a busy life, how have you incorporated that piece of connection into your life? Because it's so busy.
Yeah. I take a deep breath as I about to respond to that, because to be completely honest, I think I'm still trying to figure it out, or like remind myself of those things. It's really hard. Like I was mentioning earlier, it's law school is something I think like no other. I don't think there's a way you can really explain it. But I'll try my best. It's just a like it just doesn't feel like it never ends, essentially. And I keep getting the advice that, remember, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Yes.
And so just trying to remember that, I think, first. And then in terms of keeping those connections, something that was important for me was to make sure that I didn't, just completely go MIA for friends and family. And so I think just making that conscious effort of, calling, family members like on my drive home from school, no matter how stressed I am, and like, but just remembering that part. Also keeping in contact with friends that are not in law school, just, remembering to call them or text them back, because you can just get consumed so much with law school that it could become unhealthy.
Mhm.
So I think just knowing that going in is something that, helps remind me now of the bigger picture.
So if I heard you correctly, just like making a conscious effort, even if you're tired or it's a long day, just to make that phone call and to connect. And so once you make that phone call and connect, what is that? How do you feel?
I think at first, it's, to be completely honest, it's kind of tough to be present in conversation sometimes, just because I'm like, okay, well, what else do I have to do, like right after I get off this phone call? Um, but like I said, I think just kind of thinking that law school isn't everything. It's not like there's a whole other world going on outside. And part of that world is my friends and family that are not in law school.
Mhm.
And so I think for me, talking about anything but law school sometimes with them does help just relieve any sort of, anxiety induced.
For sure. So basically, just taking your mind off of it and
Yeah.
off of law school and
Yeah.
distracting yourself to something, something a little different. And what you talked about being present, I can relate to that. It's
Yeah.
not, it's they talk about, being present, being in the now. That's not so easy to do. I mean, that's something that takes practice, and the monkey mind is real. That monkey mind, and it just takes effort and like, I don't know if I'll ever master it, because I have that monkey mind. But I like what you said. It's just being, making a conscious effort when I make that phone call to be present
Yeah.
and connect, which I think that helps me a lot when I'm having, a bad day. The minute that I can connect with someone, it makes me feel so much better.
Yeah.
So now, growing up, did you always want to be a lawyer? Did you think about, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer? What did you
No,
want
I
to be when you
never
grow
did.
up?
So many different things. I think at one point, I grew up playing soccer, and so at
Yes,
one point I was
you're
like,
the
I'm gonna
face
be
of
a
soccer.
soccer player. that didn't work, but we're rooting for my sister.
Yes, amazing soccer. Your whole family is great at soccer.
Yeah. um, and then I think at one point when I was in Bolivia, actually, I thought about like majoring in business and having like my own like business. I don't know what type of business I wanted, to run. I think my dad had always said, like, well, why don't you like think about like law school, like for like since I was growing up, but I was always like, no, I was like, I don't even know what that means. Like, I just didn't think about it. So in short, no, I did not know I was always going to be or wanted to be an attorney.
What did you want to be other than a soccer player?
A teacher. So just like the typical, like, I honestly don't think I really knew, even going into college, I didn't really understand like what I wanted to do. I think I had the idea of like wanting to major in business just because to me it sounded so broad, like you can do a lot of things with that. But it wasn't really until I think I was in community college. I took an English course and we read some book and it was like it had to do with like ethics and the law, and I think that was like my first like kind of like light, like, oh, like this is something different. I'm a little bit more interested in like learning about this. And then some other experiences that had happened just sort of snowballed into this.
I love that because that's how it happens. I really believe it's like I have my my sons and they're like, I don't know what I want to do, and I said, you know what, son, that's okay. Because discovery is so important, and who really does know what they want to do for the rest of their life? And I love how you just use the example, like there was a light bulb, when you're in that English class, and the rest of it snowballed. And I just want to put it out there, like it's okay if you don't know what you want to do with the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Exploration is important, and sometimes you're going to have like you have the litigation, you're a litigation paralegal before you went to law, so you had that career. So tell me, what was your motivation to go to law school?
So I think it started with that class. And then I had sort of a personal experience where I needed like attorneys. And so when I was in the courtroom with them, there were two things that like really, I think, stuck out to me. The first was the lack of representation or just attorneys in the courtroom. I know everyone says like, courtrooms aren't like what the movies are, what the TVs like are like, and they're really not. Like there's sometimes like there aren't any attorneys in the courtroom except for like one or two. And so that was, I think, a really eye-opening experience in itself. Just because you would see people trying to argue, their whatever they were defending or bringing, to court, and the judges just weren't engaging because they couldn't, like there was no like legal arguments being made. And so when I graciously had these attorneys and they were able to tell my story to a judge, and the way they were able to tell it, I think that was super powerful for me, because I think storytelling in itself is so powerful, but then storytelling in the legal field especially is just such an incredible tool that really, I think, inspired me to want to do that.
I agree. I think storytelling is incredible and it's very powerful. And now in that moment, so when you were in that courtroom, you had your attorneys, but it seemed like other people didn't.
Yeah.
And so that sparked something in you. Like they didn't have someone there to tell their story.
Exactly. And I will also like add in that my attorneys, I had a very from the University of Virginia, I was very grateful because they were able to provide the attorneys for me, because I was not going to be able to afford the attorneys. And then so that's another aspect of it too, where it really opened up my mind to how expensive this is. And so I started toying with the idea of like how can we get people the legal resources that they need to defend themselves in front of a judge.
So tell me now, what's your why?
So my why, I think it's rooted a lot in my family and both sides immigrated here for different reasons. But I think that seeing all my lived experiences combined, I think would be my why, and trying to just utilize my knowledge and trying to get as many people access to legal resources and representation as possible.
Mm-hmm. And that's so needed.
Yes, it is.
Needed. Tell me, who has been the biggest influence in your life?
My mom. I'm not gonna be the one to start crying. No, my mom, and also like I think a culmination of the women in my family. I can definitively say on both sides of my family that, you know, the matriarchy for me is everything.
Mm.
But my mom has been, I think, just such a pivotal influence in everything that I do. Just seeing her resilience in quite literally everything has just been, I couldn't have asked for a better, I think, person to lead me into this world.
Yeah, I mean, your mom is definitely incredible. One of the strongest, most resilient women that I have known in my lifetime. And I can't wait to, you know, also be able to celebrate her. So it's not a surprise to me that she is one of your greatest influences.
Yeah.
So life can be stressful, and you're, you know, even before being in law school, you're in college and working. So can you share with us what were some ways that helped you stay grounded? Because, you know, it's stressful. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. Life, school, work. What helped keep you grounded?
Friendships, but I think for me, a lot of it was the quality of the friendships that I created and have made. I think I like, as I've mentioned, I think it's pretty clear that I love, you know, storytelling and hearing other people's stories and how they got to where they are, and just hearing different perspectives. And I think that the friends that I've made have really had those types of values where it's just, you can have these deep conversations with them, but you can also go out and have fun. And I think that has really kept me grounded, just because I never felt alone. You can feel, I think you can, or lonely, I should say, because you can feel like you're alone, I think, in a lot of different, you know, times in your life. But if you know you have those strong connections with people, it's just, I think it's everything.
Definitely. And again, I mean, we have a theme here. Like it's like we keep coming back to the connection to people. And please correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I love technology. I get to be here with you today.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, we've been able to connect through technology. And I feel that it's important for us to also remember that the human connection is so important.
Absolutely.
It's something that just fills us. Like you said, it's like when you pick up the phone, when you connect with that person, it makes you feel full. It makes you feel, it reduces your stress. It helps you keep your life in balance. What are some other things you do to help you kind of stay grounded?
So touching on the technology part of it, I turn off all my notifications on for social media. I don't have any of them on, because I think that like I will already open it on my own, and I don't need like that added, like, you know.
Smart.
Yeah.
It's such a distraction.
It really is.
And I'm guilty of it, you know, because I have the businesses and, you know, the boys, and then it like one distraction takes me 15 minutes. Well, that's what they say, and I believe it, to get back on track.
Yeah.
So do you turn off your, you know, notifications like always? Do you
Yeah. So like, yeah, no, for like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, like all that, like I don't even have my notifications on. Like I have to go into the app to like see anything that's like, it like comes up.
Smart.
Yeah, I've done that. I did that, I think, probably about during the pandemic, I think, actually, is when I did it. Just because that, you know, like you said, like, yes, it's a great tool to connect with people, but I think that it could also just be an overload of information sometimes.
Absolutely. And that overload of information not only distracts us, but I feel it gets harder to focus.
Absolutely.
And then, then sometimes when I'm overloaded, like I feel overwhelmed and there's a chaos. So that's a great tip, audience. Like we need to turn off our notifications for sure. So tell me I want to talk about boundaries.
Yeah.
Boundaries. It took me forever to set boundaries. So tell me a little bit about some of the boundaries you've had to set and how they've benefited you.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that going into law school is when I think that I really had to, start setting a little bit more rigid boundaries, just because my time has become so scheduled and just every minute counts, right? Um, so I think that, and what I mean by that is like in terms of talking to like friends and family, like of course I want to talk to my mom like, every day, but I had to have a conversation with her that like it wasn't, I couldn't do as much as I would want to do, or even like go home as often as I would during undergrad. Now on the flip side of that, boundaries with law school, I've tried to, I think, make another conscious effort of keeping my school life at school and doing as much work there as possible, because I want my bedroom and my house to be a safe space. And so I don't want to be, bringing all that baggage and all that stress into like my home.
That's very smart, because the energy does transfer because you're bringing it in, and then you don't have a space to go where you can kind of, unwind
Exactly.
and go out of, not that, you're in fight or flight, but when we're stressed, it's like we need time to kind of relax.
Yeah.
And so so basically you do all of your work at the library or somewhere else. You don't bring it home.
I try to do that as much as I can. There are some days where I just can't get it done and I will have to, do a reading at home. But for the most part, yeah, I'll be in the library like very early in the morning until whenever the library closes. And then I'll come home.
That's smart, because so many of us, including myself, I do so much of, my reading, my work, my writing in the bedroom, and there's no, you're right. It's like there's no time it's all there and it's always in my mind.
Yeah.
Thanks for
And
the
I
tip,
will,
Gabby.
yeah, but I will also say like, I also do recognize though that that's not like something that everyone can do, especially during the pandemic. And I think that the reason why like I made such like I wanted that to happen like during law school is because one, we are in person, we're masks, but we're all in person. During the pandemic, when I had moved back home, for about like, I think about a little over a year, I was doing everything in my room. And that I think took a really, really big toll, just because it was work in my room, working out in my room, sleeping in my room. Like it was just like I wasn't doing anything else or outside.
Right. And then when it's time to rest, there's no distinction, and our mind doesn't know the difference to turn it off.
Exactly.
And you're right. Sometimes it's easier, said than done. It's funny because I just, met with a nutritionist or a holistic person, and she said the same thing, like leave everything at the door.
Yeah.
What? I don't know if I could do that. I'm going to make the effort.
Yeah.
It's like, so our habits are hard to change, but they can be changed. So this was huge. So thank you for sharing about that. It's important. So what's been one of the biggest challenges you faced recently, and how did you overcome it?
Recently.
Or it could be whatever, maybe something like that.
I think a big challenge, well, being as like a Latina in law school and just being in the legal field, I think itself, just not seeing a lot of people that like looked like me in those higher positions. I think that can bring, or it can, at least it increased my imposter syndrome a lot of like, should I even do this? Like, why am I here? Why am I the only one here? But I think it's important that we are in these spaces. I don't think that these spaces are just made for a particular group of people, even though sometimes it might look like that and feel like that. But I think that our voices and our perspectives are much needed in these spaces.
I
I think
absolutely I absolutely agree with you. And I face, I talked about the imposter syndrome last week on my show Table Topics Tuesday. And I experience, imposter syndrome often for the same reasons. It's the I'm a little bit different than the other people in the circles, and I thought, am I supposed to do this? Am I meant to do this? And I love what you just said. It's like, yes, we are to give representation, because anyone and everyone can step into any of these. It's just we haven't had the opportunity, or maybe we weren't conditioned to believe we could have the opportunity. And that's why it's so important to recognize, like, it's a false story we're telling ourselves. That imposter syndrome, I know it's real, but it's a false story that we tell ourselves to keep ourselves safe,
yeah,
because it's scary to venture into new waters, because
yeah,
we don't know what it's going to look like, and we don't know how we're going to be accepted.
right.
And it doesn't matter as long as we know who we are.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it's, for me, something that I've also learned too, specifically talking about imposter syndrome, because I know a lot of, like, my friends have also felt it. Um, Also just sort of the way you talk to your friends is so different than the way you talk to yourself.
Girl,
And
yes.
so me and my best friend, actually, we've, I think, have talked about this a lot, of, like, the way we talk to ourselves should be the way we talk to each other. And
Yes.
so we've, like, she visited me, I think, last weekend or the weekend before, and we just had, like, we just kinda reminded ourselves of that, like, that the way we talk to us as individuals needs to be with more love and with more grace and more compassion. Um, just the same exact love, grace, and compassion that we give to other people, so
That's right. That's right. And I think, no, I know that we are harder on ourselves than anyone else, because I would never ever speak to my best friend or anyone else, anyone, even, someone that I may not connect with. I would never speak to them the way that I speak to myself. And I'm a big believer in self-talk, and flipping the script.
yeah.
And you telling yourself, okay, this is a story. Thank you. I know you're keeping me safe. I know I can do this.
Yep.
Because if you weren't meant to be here, you wouldn't be here. God, the universe, always puts us on the right path to where we're supposed to be. Like that moment in your English class that you just mentioned, when you're reading the book on ethics, that was okay. That was a start. And then it all takes steps. All the little steps get us to where we're going to be. So, you know what I say to imposter syndrome? Bye, Felicia.
I love that.
So, and we're all human, we're all human.
Yeah,
And I love the authenticity.
yeah.
So tell me, what does empathy mean to you?
Oof. For me, it means, remembering that other people have other stories and what they're just presenting, like what you're exactly seeing.
Mm.
And so just really trying to understand where they're coming from, essentially, or why, they are the way they are, or whatever they're going through. It's like, just have a little bit more grace with an acceptance, I think,
Yeah.
of someone else's experiences.
Yeah. And that's helped me so much. I've talked about this before. I came from a world that was very judgmental, very critical. And one of the most amazing things that I've learned was to get curious,
Yeah,
have empathy and acceptance, because the person is only responding from their map of reality, from their beliefs, from their experiences. And who am I to judge them?
exactly.
Because I don't know what their experience was.
Right.
And that empathy has just really helped me so much in accepting, um just I'm accepting of everyone, because we're all human beings regardless. It doesn't matter what race, color, creed, religion, gender. We're all human beings with blood rushing through our bodies. And empathy is, I don't think, practiced enough.
No. I think for me, empathy in itself, I think the way that I initially, I think really tried to understand a little bit better was actually through my parents. And just remembering that they're also human.
Yes.
And that it's okay that if they make mistakes. And something else that I always remind myself is that my parents also had me very young.
Yes.
And so the age that I'm at, I think when they were my age, I was probably like 4, which is just nuts to me because I cannot see myself with a 4-year-old right now. But so just remembering that, you know,
Yes,
they are human as
yes.
well.
And it's funny because I just had was working with a client before we got on this podcast. And that was what came up is, you know, our parents do the best that they can with the knowledge that they know. I mean, they love us and they're doing the best they can based on how they were raised, based on the information they were given.
Exactly.
And I've had to work really hard on that too, to say like, you know, my parents love me. They were doing the best they could with what they had in the moment based on the information they were given or how they were raised. Yeah. And and even talking about empathy just feels better. Like you just feel lighter. I feel a sense of peace.
Same.
Good. So what is something that you would tell someone who's interested in going to law school, but they're a little bit on the fence?
Yeah. I think something that was passed on to me a lot throughout the 4 years I was a paralegal, and I always knew I wanted to go to law school, but I just needed some I knew I wanted to go, but I just didn't feel 100% ready. But some advice that was given to me for a lot of those 4 years was you really, really have to make sure that this is what you want to do. Because as I mentioned earlier, this will take a mental toll on you. It will take an emotional toll on you, even physical toll on you. And so I think it goes back to remembering your why of like why you're going to law school. Like what exactly is it that you want to do? And being 100% sure because it's not cheap either.
Right. But how did you know you're 100% sure? Like, did you feel something in your body? Was there a sign? Like, how did you know?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, my personal experience, that was one part of it. And then after that situation happened, about 2 years later, when I was working as a paralegal, we were working on a pro bono case that was very similar to what had happened. And so just being on, I think, the attorney side of it, and then seeing, you know, our impact on like our client, and then just being back in the courtroom, but like being that, you know, paralegal that's running around the courtroom trying to find a printer. Like it was that adrenaline rush, I think was part of it, but also just remembering that our clients are people, and you know they have experiences and feelings, and being able to connect, I think, with clients was something that really was pivotal for me.
And that same theme, that connection, like it's so, that human connection is so, I think people want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear about something that you're very passionate about, which is called the Buried Alive Project. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So so one of the co-founders' name is Brittany K. Barnett, and she is an attorney. And she has a great book out called A Knock at Midnight. And it's basically her memoir. And this organization sort of stemmed out of all her work. And her work is basically doing or trying to represent incarcerated individuals who are in prison for drug sentencing laws that are either very outdated or just, in my opinion, they should just not be in prison. And so her organization basically really helps with the legal representation side of it, and just connecting with clients that are in prison and trying to get them out.
And so have you I guess my question is, do you know any of those stories? Can you share a little bit of maybe some of the stories that she talked about where there was, you know, a positive ending to it?
So on her, so she has 2. So Sharonda Jones is I think one of the main characters in the book, and I don't want to give too much of it away. It is a happy ending for her, but it kind of came full circle in a way for her, in the sense that she starts off the book with talking about her mother being in prison, and her mother's inmate number was a certain number. And then when she was in law school and she she was, I think, on YouTube searching for, I don't remember what she was doing, but she was, I think, researching. And this woman, Sharonda Jones, came up on like a YouTube video, and she had the same exact number as what her mom's prison number had been. And so she essentially became very determined to helping get this woman out of prison. And so I think she has a lot of different stories in her book that really moved me in trying to think about how I want to use my law degree. And just remembering that, as mentioned earlier, that this prison population, I think it's a population that people forget a lot about often. And so just remembering that there are people there and they also do have lived experiences.
Yes.
So yeah.
And I agree that a lot of those laws are very, outdated. And I don't know too much about this, but I am aware also that the prison system is a business, so it benefits them to keep people incarcerated.
Yeah.
And on that note, what type of law are you going into?
So I haven't made a full decision just yet. I think criminal law really, I'm being pulled towards criminal law as a paralegal again. My last 2 years where I was at, I was able to work on some criminal cases on the white collar side of it, but also on the pro bono side of it. And I worked on some compassionate release cases during COVID. And I think that really, moved me in wanting to do that type of work, or at least being involved in that type of work at some point in my career.
So I know that you received a SPOT award.
Yeah.
For your paralegal work on compassionate release cases. So tell us a little bit about that. That's exciting.
Yeah, it was basically just a recognition of the work that I did as a paralegal. And I did a lot of, I basically helped the attorneys file all their motions related to the compassionate release cases, getting them entered in.
What does that mean? What's a compassionate release case?
Yeah, so basically so very similar to actually what Brittany was doing. We were helping people get out of jail for either sentences that the sentencing laws that had changed from the time that these people had been sentenced to prison, and then modern day sentencing law or times of when they would have been or how long they would have been in prison. And so a lot of our cases had to do with COVID related, just because COVID really just, I think, in the prisons just kind of loomed all over everywhere. And so we worked on a lot of those cases. And so I was the only paralegal on it at the time. And so basically, as I mentioned, I was helping, the attorneys file their cases. I was helping them Blue Book, which is essentially just site checking their briefs, filing them, also coordinating a lot of mailings or correspondence between our firm and our clients. And that was very eye-opening because I had to learn a lot of rules that I did not know about of what you can mail to your clients in prison.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you're learning, on the job, and you're learning in law school, and it's a constant, you constantly have to be on.
Yeah. Yeah. It was.
What do you do when you turn off?
I don't, I guess I'm trying to sometimes, but I think working, you're always going to be busy, but you do have sometimes you have those lulls periods where it's okay, I can take a breather today and get back into it tomorrow, have a weekend off, if that happens. With law school, it's a little bit different. As I mentioned earlier, it's some advice that was given to me was that it's a marathon, not a race. So just remembering that, just keeping a steady pace, I guess, throughout it.
For sure. And you're the second person this week to mention that phrase. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Yeah. What does that mean to you?
That you don't have to be on 100 every single day.
That's right.
Because you will burn yourself out very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah. And just, I think taking it day by day, breaking up your work, day by day, hour by hour, and just remembering that because it doesn't end, like, you don't have to do everything in one night.
Right. Just pacing yourself.
Yeah.
And being gentle with yourself, going back to the self-talk that we talked about earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So if there was one thing you could do over, Gabby, if there was one thing you could do over, if there is, what would that be?
I'm not sure if I would do anything over, if I'm being completely honest.
And that's great.
Yeah, I'm a very firm believer. I think that everything does happen for a reason, and I would not be in this place if it weren't for a lot of things I didn't even want to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I
agree. I also am a big believer that, most things, happen for a reason, and we're exactly where we are meant to be in that moment. And if we're not where we want to be, we're not ready. And, we'll take the steps to get there.
Yeah, exactly.
What keeps you, inspired and motivated on a regular, like what just keeps you going?
I think I have this frame above like my desk. And it sort of reminds me of like why I'm in law school and a little bit what I just talked about of centering my career in terms of helping or just providing, I think, resources to people that don't have it. And so I think this is part of it. It says nobody's free until everybody's free.
Oh.
And I think that can mean so many different things.
I just got emotional. So damn.
Yeah.
And that's your why is to work for everyone to have a voice.
Yeah. Well, to amplify people's voices, and in particular,
to be heard and seen.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're going to do amazing things. You're incredible. I'm so proud of you. And we definitely look forward to, I definitely will keep track of your journey on Instagram. I know that the school highlighted you and celebrated you the other day. So that was beautiful to watch. And thank you so much for all you do, for stepping out of the box.
Thank you.
And doing and showing up and doing this. Yeah. Someone wants to get a hold of you if they have questions or if they're interested in, the law school journey. Is there a way that they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. But also just Instagram, or even Twitter. I don't use Twitter as much. I just follow people. But yeah, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. My handles are just Gabby Villafan. So yeah. And
we'll make sure to put your information there. So if anyone's interested to chat with you, or if they, want some advice, we'll definitely have your information there. Yeah, absolutely. Happy to answer any questions because I know I bugged a lot of people before law school. So no, it's great to know, like if someone has a question, that there's someone that they could reach out to, because sometimes you just don't know where to go. So I'm excited that whoever's watching and may need the resource, that you're available to them. Yeah, absolutely. Happy to help. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been amazing. It's definitely come full circle. I'm so proud of you and definitely look forward to staying in touch with you. And to everyone that's watching today and on the replay, thank you so much for joining us. And if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to share and rate. And until our next time that we see you, I wish you a magnificent rest of the day. Take care. Thank you so much. Bye. Hey, love, thank you so much for listening today. I am so grateful for you. I'd like to show you my appreciation by gifting you a free forgiveness self-hypnosis audio download. Part of living the fun and fabulous life is practicing forgiveness. Forgiveness can be such a long and challenging process. My intention is that this forgiveness audio will help you in practicing forgiveness, especially with yourself. Grab it by visiting daretoachieve.com/forgiveness. For more inspiring tips, make sure to connect with me on social media. Drop me a line on Facebook or Instagram at Grace Redman Dare to Achieve. Until next time, keep moving forward towards living your fabulous life.